If you're here right now, I'm sorry, because I know this means you have really tried it all to heal your relationship with food and stop overeating. By the time people get to the point of trying intuitive eating, you've likely gone through a long diet history. And I don't mean like you've tried one diet. I mean, you have been at this for years, maybe decades. You have counted calories, done the points, cut carbs. You have tried the cleanses. And every single time it worked for a little until it didn't. And then you started blaming yourself for why everything was failing. This is exactly what happened to me too. After years of trying things like intermittent fasting and cutting my calories to 1,200 calories, I knew that something wasn't working. And I had been learning about intuitive eating and diet culture and decided that maybe this was the solution. That if I had tried dieting so hard, maybe the solution was to go anti-diet and go to the other side of the spectrum. So I looked up the principles of intuitive eating and I tried to start listening to my hunger and fullness. But what happened really failed me. As I tried intuitive eating, I just kept eating past fullness, eating sugar way past what felt good in my body, and gaining weight. Sometimes when I would start eating these foods that were previously off limits, my craving would go away for a little bit, but then it would come back later that day. So for example, I'd give myself permission to have the birthday cake at lunch, but then later that night, I would still want another piece of birthday cake. It never really took away that craving for that long. Or what would also happen is I would eat the birthday cake at lunch, and I would just feel so much more desire than I even had started with. It was like eating the food awakened this extra urge within me to keep eating more. So when I started intuitive eating, I actually gained 20 pounds. I felt more out of control, ashamed and hopeless and broken than I did before I started it. And it's not necessarily all aspects of intuitive eating that went wrong for me. It was more how I went about it. And I remember thinking, if I can't even do the thing that's supposed to be the anti-diet, something truly must be wrong with me. But the answer was nothing was wrong with me. The tool just wasn't a right fit for where I was and what my goals were. So first, let's talk what even is intuitive eating. Intuitive eating is a set of 10 principles that originally came from this book called Intuitive Eating that was first published in 1995, but really started taking off in the 2010s. I feel like a couple years ago probably was the height of intuitive eating. There's been sort of a downfall, at least from what I've noticed in people talking about it, which I think is unfortunate because there is a lot that we can take from it. Intuitive eating in and of itself is not all wrong or bad. There's a lot of principles that I do love from it and do follow. I also teach this intuitive eating approach where you're going to learn how to eat without calorie counting points or artificial drugs and instead tune into your body. I like to think of our hunger and fullness cues as the best calorie counter in the world because they are totally customized to us. They know exactly what we need. They adjust for when we're laying on the couch all day or hiking a giant mountain. All of that gets accounted for when we're listening to our body. So that is what I agree with and what I teach. And intuitive eating makes a lot of sense on the surface to just listen to our body. The research is real too, that diet culture is harmful and restriction does lead to binge eating. But there are a few reasons why intuitive eating often fails for people and why I don't really call myself an intuitive eating coach. That's not the main thing I do. We really address your brain and your biology in my Confident Eater program together to get you the whole package of healing from binge eating. So the first problem with traditional intuitive eating is that you start by trying to listen to your body too early on when your hunger and fullness cues are still skewed. Binge eating and restricting makes your hunger hormones completely thrown off. So they're not a reliable thing to follow in the beginning. And intuitive eating assumes that your hunger signals are trustworthy. But for most people dealing with binge eating, they're just not quite yet. That doesn't mean that they're never going to work, but it's like we're using a broken compass where the internal mechanisms have been shifted a little that aren't going to give us the right directions. So I actually don't recommend focusing on your hunger and fullness and really using those to fully listen to your body until much later down the line. In my Confident Eater program, I don't work with this on clients until month 3 because there's other things we can work on like your emotional eating, your ability to sit with discomfort, handle urges, changing your mindset around foods. That when we do that first and you start to get in a more regular eating schedule, you're having true structure around food. Your leptin and ghrelin, which are your hunger hormones, will start to balance out and become a lot more predictable and reliable. So then when you listen to your hunger and fullness, it doesn't feel like they're all crazy. Oftentimes when people start intuitive eating, they feel like either one, they never get hungry, that they could just go all day without eating, or they feel like they're hungry all day long, that no matter how much they eat, it just isn't enough. Both of these are kind of a sign that your hunger and fullness signals are thrown off. And this goes the other way with fullness too, that if you feel like you eat tons of food and you're still not full, or you eat just like one bite of food and you're like oddly full, that's another sign that these signals can be thrown off. And maybe it's not the best idea to start listening to them right away as your main source of information about how you should be eating. The second reason that intuitive eating can fail for a lot of people and end in more weight gain is because there's not a real structure to it. All it is a set of 10 principles. There's no real personal guidance. There's no one asking you what's actually triggering your eating or looking at your background with eating. It's treating it as this one-size-fits-all approach. And this is why I do one-on-one coaching with people, is because I really love getting to see, why are you specifically binge eating? There's a lot of band-aid solutions out there and a lot of one-size-fits-all approaches, but the truth is everybody has a unique relationship with food, and our relationship with food is complicated. Like, you've been eating ever since the time you were a baby, and there's a lot of factors, a lot of influences that have gone into that relationship with food that often need a lot of unpacking. So there's really no one there that's helping you figure out why Tuesday nights are a disaster, or why you can white knuckle it all day long and then completely fall apart after dinner. That personalization is really not optional. It's what makes change happen permanently. A little bit about your brain and a little brain science for you too. In order for your brain to change, we have to find a specific moment where you get triggered, right? So this is why you'll hear all these general tips on Instagram or in a podcast or something, and you'll think, oh, that's a really good tip, I should do it. But it's not applied to your specific situation when you're snacking at 3 p.m. And when we hear that general tip, it kind of just goes over our head. But when we have an activated memory of our specific situation, of when your coworker Janet starts yelling at you at 3 p.m. on Tuesdays because she's mad at you for another thing she thinks you didn't do right, and then you go into your chocolate drawer, that is a very specific moment. And when we get that specific moment, that's what activates your neural network and makes it changeable. So this is why, again, it's so important for you to have someone there to support you. It's not just because I want you to work with me, like of course I do, but truly because I know how your brain changes, and we have to find the specific moments. General advice just doesn't change your brain the way that working with someone who knows your exact triggers will. Okay, the third reason why intuitive eating might have been failing you is because there's nothing in intuitive eating that addresses your habitual urges. So your habitual urges are as they sound. They're urges that have been formed by habit. Every single time you have acted on an urge to binge, you have reinforced this brain pathway. So even if your hunger signals are working properly and you're not restricting, you're eating regular meals, you can still be stuck overeating at night when you're bored because you've gotten into the habit of doing that. Intuitive eating has no frameworks for breaking those loops. It just tells you to honor your hunger, but what are you supposed to do when you're not hungry and you still feel that urge to eat? And finally, intuitive eating doesn't take into consideration how our food system has changed over the last 50 years. The truth that no one is talking about is that they have been designing our foods to rewire our taste buds and our craving systems so that we want to eat more of them. It's not as simple as just include cake back in and you'll have a healthy relationship with cake, because the ingredients in our cake have 10x to have all of these other additives that make our taste buds think we're eating something more nutritious than we actually are. When all of these flavorings and extra ingredients have been added into cake, like if you look at the back of a label on the grocery store cakes, you know, it's so long. The reason they're doing that is for a couple reasons. It's cheaper, it makes it last longer, and it's going to make it taste better, but it's not going to help us nutritionally. The more we eat these hyper palatable, ultra processed foods, the more we increase our cravings for them. And so that's why it feels like in the moment, okay, I feel a little satisfied by this because we're finally releasing the rules around it and the restrictions and all of these things that we told ourselves we're not allowed to have. But then that night, the craving comes back even stronger because these foods are designed to keep us hooked. Now, this does not mean that you're going to be addicted to them, okay? This is really important and I need you to hear this. Eating a processed food does not automatically make you binge on it, but it does make it harder to not binge on it than it would with broccoli. But it does not mean that it's impossible to sit with that craving. If you want this journey of listening to your body, healing your relationship with food, eating like a normal person to be as easy as possible, I recommend having as many whole foods as possible because that's what will actually make you so satisfied. I have been talking to so many clients about this week. I had one client who just replaced her protein powder in the morning with yogurt, and another one who has started snacking on almonds instead of protein bars. Now, I know the two examples I just gave with protein, you're probably thinking, well, those are aren't really ultra processed foods, but they are. And maybe I'll have to do a full episode on this. It's something I definitely dive into in my modules inside the Confident Eater program. But the reason that protein powder can be considered an ultra processed food is because it has all these added flavorings in it. Like, think about when you eat chocolate protein powder, you're now telling your brain, hey, the flavor of chocolate has protein in it. So guess what? The next time your body's craving protein, it's going to crave chocolate. Even though an actual chocolate bar doesn't really have any protein in it. So if you're sitting there thinking though, but Amber, like, it has felt really good to just release those rules and all of that diet BS that I've been taught about sugar and processed foods and all of this, I get it, right? No one wants to live by rules that they didn't create. And that's what makes this approach different. I do not want you following any rules that you don't want to follow. I personally do not really eat processed sugar anymore, but it's not a hard and fast rule. I don't tell myself I'm never gonna have cake again in my entire life, but I know that if I didn't, I would be okay and I'd still have a very happy, pleasurable life. Now, why does this, quote, rule feel easy for me to follow and not restricted? Because I did do sugar-free 5 years ago because I thought, well, sugar's the problem here. Let me just cut out sugar. I changed my mindset around this and I learned new information. I learned how these foods impact our cravings and how they mess up our inbuilt craving system. And because I had that awareness, I was able to be more informed about my food decisions and understand that I choose not to eat sugar now because it genuinely makes me feel like shit. Okay, I have noticed a night and day difference in my mental health, in my fullness, in my energy levels when I don't have sugar. So it doesn't feel like a rule anymore. I don't feel like I'm back in diet culture because I'm saying I don't eat processed sugar. I have a new mindset around it. So it feels easy and doable and fun, and I love having that guideline because it really supports my body and my goals and my well-being. Ignoring our food system is ignoring a huge piece of the puzzle in obesity and weight loss and just feeling good in our bodies. Like, if we just take weight loss out of this too, all of these extra additives do not make us feel how we want to feel. So I want you to know that there is a middle ground here. I know that when we are in the food struggle and every day just feels like a challenge and it feels like there's so many different approaches and now there's GLP-1s and all of these shots and should we take one of these? All of these approaches feel very on the extremes. Like, taking a GLP-1 kind of feels like this is an extreme option. I don't really know if I want to go there, but I guess I'll go there if I have to. Going on another diet, that also feels extreme, but I don't know. Maybe I'll go there if I have to. Going full anti-diet and just saying I'm gonna have everything in any amount and put no restrictions on myself is another approach. But there is a middle ground, one where you can have guidelines around food, where you can have structure, but not feel rigid around them, not feel like you're on this strict diet that you can't go out to a restaurant or you can't travel. I love to travel, and that was one of the biggest things that was a must-have in my forever food plan, was being able to go out to eat anywhere in the world on a whim, not have to look at the restaurant menu before, not have to plan it out, and just know I could show up wherever, listen to my body, maintain my weight, and feel my best. And that is what I have achieved. So it is possible. We don't need to go to these extremes. And that's why I do what I do. And I'm so passionate about teaching you guys this, because I know how frustrating it is to feel like all that there ever is are these hard approaches that require willpower or require you to gain weight. You don't have to gain weight to recover. Most of my clients end up losing some weight, not because they're trying, but because they're actually doing a long-term sustainable approach that works. All right, have a great week. Talk to you next week.